Are good times on the horizon? Well, that's what we've been talking about for a very long time. When you look at this particular chart, copper versus gold, and it's 3 points that it's shown strength since 2016, and how it's correlated with the ISM Business Manufacturing Index, it paints a very strong picture. Align that with recent news events of Donald Trump pulling back tax, SEC working to allow tokenized stocks to trade 24/7, and the White House wanting to end any unnecessary regulations for the crypto area. We may on the verge of America working towards providing better regulatory clarity, and with conditions supporting copper versus gold, we could be having a better risk on market. Why? Bitcoin is slowing down momentum to the downside. We can also see that the liquidation heat map over here, we've kind of finished or are very close to our move downside before possible moves upside. All of this we're going to cover on this particular video and share with you where we might be heading in the near short term to midterm. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strategic Markets, your place for technical and fundamental analysis all at once. Now, into our midweek session, we are going to start off with Trump's taco trade. Again, where
Hey,
he's
taco!
chickened out. Trump always chickens out. That is the name I'm saying. And he's basically said that Saudi Arabia, Emir of Qatar, basically the UAE have gotten together and told him to hold off on any attacks as of the Tuesday-Wednesday period, because at the end of the day, they are now way closer to negotiations than they've been ever before. And this, in terms of sentiment, did bring some end-of-day positive action to the markets. We'll cover that in this particular session. Like at the end of the day, for now, the strikes are paused while better discussions are had through the peace proposal via Pakistan. This news is just minimalistic. We just got to follow through with what the charts are saying. And when we look at technicals such as the SPX, right now, we can't confirm that the momentum has dropped or fading away. It's currently signaling a little bit of a downtrend in the short term. Brent crude on the medium term is on a bit of an upwards trend. And from what I'm seeing here on the daily with the RS, when I draw this particularly out, right now, Brent crude is not breaking up above this RSI. So I'm particularly seeing it lose strength, even though it is currently building this particular little upwards trend line. So I'm just going to have to see this follow through over the next couple of days, whether it continues to break down from here or it continues to make its move up. It is a little bit relevant to geopolitical news. But what we've been discussing with you consistently to give you insight as to why, at least medium to the reasonable long term, we are being a bit bullish in the market is right in front of you. Copper versus gold and the US Manufacturing Index. This particular chart has signaled the last 3 bullish instances we have had in the market, being from the 2016-2017 era, the 2020 to 2021 era, and recently now the 2026 era. And if you've looked over here, the last time we had it, they correlated perfectly. The moment the manufacturing index broke up above the 50 level on the red line and then moved upwards, copper versus gold outperformed. Again, we broke up above 50 on 1st of June 2020, copper versus gold outperformed. And then again, we broke above 50 recently and we're staying above. And copper versus gold is nearly about to take out its local high on the monthly. Why this happens? Why does copper outperform gold? Well, basically, copper is used to manufacture a lot of things. And when that's needed more in supply as compared to gold, what that does is it brings back confidence in the markets that manufacturing is occurring and businesses in America are making more money. And when all of these things correlated, we have a thing known as the business cycle. If you look at some other aspects that confirm forward-looking and supporting tech, some really cool things that came out was this news. The SEC is basically releasing an innovation exemption for tokenized stocks. That means tokenized assets as blockchain technology will now be able to trade stocks, and that could be 24/7 accessible all around the world. Basically, anyone who has access to a stablecoin, they set up an exchange and they're able to have exposure to American stocks, will be able to buy it from anywhere around the world at any given time. And this kind of technology would be very good for crypto, which we're going to talk about in a second, and at the same time, very good for global access to markets. Another interesting thing that's been in discussion very recently is the unnecessary regulations for Bitcoin and crypto. Well, the White House says that they want to end it. This came out recently on the Tuesday, Wednesday aspect as well. And this is just generally good when we're saying risk on narratives are looking strong with copper versus gold, while supporting news evidence is also coming into play. What does that look like for Bitcoin? Well, if we have a look at Bitcoin, I've been talking about these particular two patterns consistently. This ascending wedge pattern and this bearish flag with the sideways range. Okay. Now with the bearish flag and the sideways range, we broke above it. I was bullish. I was hoping for a retest and a move upwards. That failed because of this ascending wedge breakdown to the bottom. Now, my ascending wedge breakdown to the bottom target still sit at about the 75K level, but I might not always get my way, and that is okay. Because currently, it looks like we have bounced off the 50-day moving average. I still have faith that we touch the 75K level because we haven't closed this daily yet. Now, what you can see with this particular chart is we have been losing momentum with each red candle that's been printed for the last 6 days or so. But if this becomes a turnover candle, we could still have momentum to the downside to flush out new longs that come into the market. And that is what the liquidation heat map is showing. If you look at the liquidation heat map over here, first of all, we've got some liquidation sitting at the upside, which means that the price would go up to remove any short liquidations and basically position the market upwards. But right now, if you look at this particular liquidation heat map and the bars around it, we've got some liquidation leverages about $180 million, and then altogether about $190 million as well, all the way cumulative to about 1.42 billion, sitting just around the 74,700 level. So if we take that particular liquidity out, I think we've got a lot more room to run up as compared to right now just switching directions. But if bigger money is involved and they do decide to switch momentums, but I definitely holding on to my thesis. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm generally midterm to long-term bullish for this market, but I just want you guys to be aware before you make a decision. Even Hyperliquid, which is a decentralized crypto exchange, and data for that is reasonably accessible. It has high amounts of liquidity at about the 74,200 level. So I'm a believer of those areas being touched. And another category that's showing this particular bearish price action is altcoins. We know altcoins very recently have actually been red pretty consistently. So on the weekly, they haven't been performing very well. And unless Bitcoin shows any strength, or most of all, Ethereum, which I'm actually very happy for Steve to discuss today, shows any strength, these are going to stay like this. And the one crypto that I am actually wanting to discuss and show with you today is this little one over here in the middle. It's called Ondo. And why am I discussing Ondo? Well, based on the news events that we just discussed today, SEC is going to allow for innovation exemptions for tokenized stocks to be able to trade 24/7. And Ondo is the perfect aspect to receive benefits from that particular news. If you see, Ondo was this particular crypto that was sitting at about 25 cents. In about nearly 1.5 weeks time, went all the way up to 48 cents, nearly doing 100% move before forming a bit of a bullish flag. And when it formed this particular bullish flag, it actually very recently broke up above the flag, tested it again, and now is showing strength again, giving me minor price action targets, not financial advice, for currently hitting about 42 cents. We'll just have to see how this go. But I am a believer of Ondo. The only reason why is because they are tokenizing real world assets such as stocks, bonds, and treasuries onto the blockchain. And they want to be able to provide access to all around the world 24/7 trading, which is a really cool aspect. And when you look at their particular website, they have got partnerships with BlackRock, which is a largest banking entity in America. They are partnered with Franklin Templeton, and they're built on Ethereum, Solana. So they're fairly accessible. They're fairly friendly to the crypto native and stocks areas. So if you want to focus on altcoins right now and you believe narratives are there, such as AI narratives, such as real world assets narratives, focusing a little bit on altcoins might be of benefit to you if you want to take a little bit of an edge in the tech and crypto development area. But on that, I will let Steve comment a little bit more and his thoughts on this particular asset class.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Yash. As always, fantastic presentation. Now, you've been discussing quite a lot in relation to Bitcoin and Ethereum and the cryptocurrencies this particular time around. So let's start off and kick off the discussion in relation to those. Bitcoin, as we can see, very constrained at this point in time in relation to all of the moving averages, and we can really see all of that directly on this chart. Stuck underneath the short-term moving average, constrained pretty much along the lines here by this 150-day moving average being the orange line, and it's above these VWAPs, the pink line being the quarterly VWAP, and the green line here being the yearly VWAP. Now, isn't it interesting how it aligns directly with the numbers that you were talking about a few moments ago, Yash? 74,000 in terms of the 4-hour support line, the yearly VWAP being 75,250, and the quarterly VWAP being 75,700. So very close to that 74.8 area that you were discussing in relation to your discussion a few moments ago. This is all the area where it's directly bouncing off, all of those wicks. So really, really interesting right there. What's really fascinating though is when you take a look over at the Ichimoku curve, we've got the lagging indicator forming lower highs and lower lows. So we've got a little bit of weakness going along there. On top of that as well, this Tenkan-sen blue line could actually be about to cross that red baseline. Should that cross there, that's usually negative tendencies. So we could actually be seeing even further pullback, which may actually bring it back down to around about where the cloud area is, which would align directly with that 4-hour support line as well. So really bringing in that thesis once again to where you're talking about into that 74,800 line, aligning exactly to where you're talking about with that liquidity heat map. Really fascinating there. Now, when it comes to Ethereum, this really aligns exactly with what you're talking about in terms of the weakness of the altcoins. Is that a surprise? Not really. We've been talking about this for quite some time, especially since it broke all of these support lines back here around about the end of 15th of May in terms of that particular week, which was around about the end of last week. Ever since then, we've had this complete and total collapse. We were testing this area here being the 100-day moving average, and we were talking about this on Sunday in terms of a potential turning up and a curving up of the 100-day moving average, and whether or not the price of Ethereum could actually be bouncing off this area and hopefully, for those who are holding Ethereum, bouncing up and potentially coming back up to test these VWAP areas back up here around about 2,270. This is not happening though. What we've got at the present time is a collapse underneath the 100-day moving average, and now a test of prior support line back from April 2023. And that area is 2,100. Does that ring a bell, Yash?
That sure does.
It sure does, doesn't it? The magical 2,100 number again. We're right back around that area again. Now, we've been back at that area for quite a while ago. And if we go back here, this is this area where we had a large amount of congestion back at the end of March, back at 2,100 again. Okay, so that's exactly where we're tending to head right again from where we were at the end of March. So we really haven't moved all that far. Okay, hey, we've come back up and tested this area from back in January of 2022 in terms of the 2,400 mark, but now we're smack bang right back where we started from the end of March. So it goes to show exactly where the weakness is in Ethereum, and now it's translating across to all of the altcoins like you were showing before. But like you were also suggesting, we do have this Ondo coin, which is showing a little bit of extra strength. Why? Okay, we'll have a look at it from all of these different perspectives. And I agree exactly with what you're talking about in relation to this. We've got a fair amount of strength in terms of testing the short-term moving averages, being the yellow 8-day EMA, the cyan 15-day EMA. We've got some good testing going on there. But most importantly, we're trading above both of the VWAPs and most importantly, above the 200-day moving average as well. So we had a nice break above there, a test of it, a false break below it, and then it's trading up above it again. So the strength is there. But even more importantly, higher highs and higher lows are starting to form on the lagging indicator back here on the Ichimoku curve. And we also had a crossover of the blue Tenkan-sen above the red baseline as well in relation to the Ichimoku curve here as well. And and that Tenkan-sen has remained above the baseline at this point in time. Should that Tenkan-sen cross back below the baseline though, that's where you may see some weakness. So keep an eye on that in relation to indicators as well. So that's cryptocurrencies in a nutshell at this point in time. How does this relate to all of the other things like the indices and so forth? Well, our good old friend the Russell, as you were alluding to as well, is not going all that great. That is really starting to turn downwards overall. Really, really struggling in terms of below the short-term moving averages. Could be potentially coming back towards that 50-day moving average being the blue line and the 100-day moving average being the white line as well. We have the potential in terms of this Tenkan-sen about to cross below the baseline as well. So there's some more weakness potentially going along there, as well as lower highs and lower lows forming on a lagging indicator. So the Russell is really, really struggling. Why is the Russell struggling? Well, we've been talking about this quite a lot. A lot of other outlets are just starting to actually kick in and pick up on all of this, but we're really starting to struggle because of the bonds. And the bonds are really, really flailing around pretty badly. And you can see how much they're really, really flailing. Lower highs, lower lows really forming quite substantially on this. All of the moving averages, all of the VWAPs, everything's turning down south in relation to this. The long-term bonds, as well as the short-term bonds, the short-term bonds falling at a lower pace compared to the long-term bonds. We're talking about backwardation and so forth in the last video as well. Go back to that video and check that out if you haven't already. In terms of the Dow not falling as badly as, say, the Russell, not as badly affected as the Russell in terms of the Russell being interest rate sensitive in particular. The SPY falling as well, but not as bad. Keep an eye in particular in terms of the SPY, in terms of the top 500 stocks in the US. Should we actually start falling beneath the 15-day EMA, that's where we're really, really starting to really struggle. So we've got warning signs at the moment in terms of the US markets. We've really got some major problems happening. Should we actually start falling beneath there in terms of that cyan line? The Qs, the same situation. At the moment, we're actually poised to actually probably start a bit higher today in terms of the market, which is about to open in about an hour's time. Currently at 8:30 over New York at this point in time as we're recording. All dependent in terms of bonds. That's one thing in particular. Brent Crude is another aspect. Brent Crude looks as though it's actually going to be opening higher. But if we go to Brent Crude overall here, around about the short-term moving averages at this point, but as you can see, it's actually still above the quarterly VWAP and above the yearly VWAP. So the buyers are still in control in relation to Brent Crude at this point in time. But really overall, we're still range bound. That is the biggest thing in terms of Brent Crude. We're still really in terms of a bond-driven market right now. Brent Crude's still at this point in time in terms of the war, but not really to the same extent as the bonds right now at this point in time. But if we go back to USO, you can see that's about to open a little bit lower there, but still above the short-term moving averages and still above the quarterly VWAP and the yearly VWAP. So buyers still in control there, and you can also see higher highs and higher lows in the lagging indicator there on the Ichimoku curve. Another interesting observation is the dollar. The dollar is strengthening yet again. So that's also showing more of a riskier aspect that's going on in relation to the markets at this point in time. It's above that former resistance that we were talking about from December of 2025 as well. So there's still quite a lot of dynamics going on in relation to the fact of people getting a little bit averse to the markets in the grand scheme of things. Even though the volatility in the market is still not really spiking all that much, we are seeing some higher highs and higher lows forming in the actual overall daily charts. And we're also starting to see that in the lagging indicator as well on the Ichimoku. The most interesting things are still the commodities as well at this point in time as well, because we are actually still seeing lower highs and lower lows forming in relation to gold as well as silver. Gold actually starting to make its way back down to the 200-day moving average being that red line. And in terms of silver, we're really, really starting to see some weakness popping through there as well in terms of about to test that 150-day moving average as well. So a lot of dynamics going on overall with a lot of different instruments in the grand scheme of things. But quite a lot happening. We really need to keep an eye on these levels, the bonds, the dollar, and also the commodities, gold and silver. It's not just a Brent crude story anymore. That's just Rangebound. We haven't been breaking out of either of those 4-hour support and resistance lines for quite some time. If we break out up above, then we've got a big story on our hands there. But unless it does that, it's now looking across at the bonds, the dollar, and gold and silver. They are the big key catalysts at this point in time. Really keep an eye also on SPX and Qs as well. If they cut below at 15-day EMA, then we've got some real struggles on our hands as well there too. But the Russell is also a really, really big key. If that doesn't actually start recovering, we could also still have some more weakness going along in relation to the cryptocurrencies as well. Don't worry too much about what Trump's doing in terms of Taco. He's going to change his mind left, right, and centre. Keep an eye on the charts. That's the big thing. With that, mate, right back over to you, buddy.
Thanks for that, Steve. I don't believe we're out of the woods just yet. We could still have bearish price action, and unless we get a confirmation with a change of momentum, we can't really be fully optimistic just yet. So keep an eye out on things, and when risk indicators such as crypto or these beneficial news aspects such as support from the regulations keep coming in, and if there's a change in momentum, we'll be here to let you know. On that, thank you so much for joining today's session. If you actually got a lot out of this, please drop us a like or drop us a comment as to what we could do differently, something you enjoyed, or even something we could do better. On that, let's go with today's word being taco. Drop that in the comment. Mark, we love your support. Thank you so much. Keeps us going. But on that, we will see you in the next one.
Taco.